The doorbell rang. A cheerful, unassuming ding-dong that was completely at odds with the sense of impending doom gathering in my stomach. I peeked through the peephole. Oh, fantastic. 2 figures in matching khaki uniforms standing on my porch. Animal control. Again. And just beyond them, partially obscured by the aggressively perfect petals of her prize-winning peace roses, lurked the unmistakable silhouette of my neighbor, Karen. She was pretending to inspect a leaf, secateurs in hand, but her posture screamed, "Neighborhood Watch Commander observing target." I plastered on my best "Who me?" smile and opened the door. "Mr. Henderson?" asked the taller officer, flipping open a notepad. He looked tired, like he'd spent his morning wrestling rabid squirrels or mediating disputes between territorial chihuahuas. His partner, younger and seemingly more invested, held a clipboard like a shield. "That's me," I confirmed, trying to project an air of breezy innocence. "What can I do for you fine officers today? Did General Meow forget to file his feline tax return again?" The taller officer, Miller, I think his name tag read, sighed audibly. "Sir, we're here regarding a complaint filed about your animal, a feline orange tabby." "General Meow?" I feigned surprise, leaning against the door jamb. "The fluffball currently napping in that sunbeam?" I gestured vaguely towards my living room, where the general was indeed performing his primary function, converting solar energy into blissful inertia. What heinous crime is he accused of this time? Did he look at her begonias disrespectfully again? Fail to admire her new wind chimes with sufficient enthusiasm? The younger officer, consulting his clipboard with grave importance, cleared his throat. "Complaint alleges, He squinted at the form. "Unprovoked vandalism of decorative lawn statuary, specifically item identified as Norman the Gnome, resulting in minor abrasions consistent with feline claw marks. Furthermore," he continued, warming to his task, "the complainant alleges the animal frequently trespasses and creates an atmosphere of menace." I blinked. Atmosphere of menace? General Meow weighed maybe 8 pounds soaking wet, and at least half of that was pure, unadulterated orange fluff. His most menacing act to date involved batting a dust bunny under the sofa with extreme prejudice, and Norman the Gnome? That ceramic monstrosity with the dead eyes and the creepy, fixed grin looked inherently menacing all on his own. "Seriously?" I asked, unable to keep the disbelief entirely out of my voice. "We're talking about scratches? On a gnome? Was Norman traumatized? Did he require counseling? Are there tiny gnome therapists for this sort of thing?" Officer Miller rubbed his temples. "Sir, regulations require us to follow up on all formal complaints, however, minor." He glanced towards Karen's lurking form, a subtle nod acknowledging the source of this bureaucratic headache. "The complainant," he stressed the word slightly, "provided photographic evidence of the abrasions, close-ups, and cited County Ordinance 47B regarding pets being contained on owner's property or under direct supervision at all times." Photographic evidence of microscopic paint chips on a garden gnome? Karen truly had reached a new level of obsessive surveillance. "So, what happens now?" I asked, trying to keep the rising tide of "Are you kidding me?" from boiling over. "Do you need to take the general downtown for questioning? Get his paw prints." "No, sir," Officer Miller said, his voice flat. "This serves as a formal warning. We document the complaint, issue a notice. However, if further substantiated complaints regarding property damage or ordinance violations are filed, it could result in fines, potentially even a mandatory confinement order for the animal." Fines? Mandatory confinement? For patting a gnome? My hand instinctively clenched. I looked past the officers towards Karen, who chose that exact moment to look up from her roses, catching my eye. She gave me a tight, triumphant little smirk before turning back to her pruning, mission accomplished. Oh, it was on. You don't mess with a man's cat, especially not over alleged gnome assault. Understood, officers, I said, forcing my voice to remain calm. I assure you, General Meow will be kept under closer supervision to prevent any further gnome-related distress. They nodded, made a few notes, handed me a pamphlet titled Responsible Pet Ownership in Suburbia, featuring a smiling golden retriever, pointedly not an orange tabby, and retreated to their van, leaving me alone on the porch with my simmering rage and the faint scent of Karen's smugness drifting over the property line. The incident itself? The catalyst for this official visit had been laughably minor. It happened 3 days earlier. I was juggling 2 overloaded grocery bags, fumbling with my keys, when General Meow, master opportunist, saw his chance. A flicker of orange fluff, a silent dart between my legs, and he was out. Freedom. For approximately 30 glorious seconds. Before I could even drop the groceries and yell his name, he'd trotted across the 3 feet of my lawn separating our houses and onto the edge of Karen's unnaturally green, chemically treated turf. His target? Norman. Norman the gnome stood sentinel near the property line, fishing pole eternally poised over a non-existent pond. The general, intrigued by this squat, colorful interloper, approached cautiously. He sniffed Norman's pointy red hat. He regarded the fishing pole with suspicion. Then, he lifted a paw and gave the gnome's ceramic boot a gentle boop. Maybe 2 boops. Claws likely retracted, as usual when he was just being curious. That's when the window overlooking the scene slid open with a shriek of tortured aluminum. "Michael!" Karen's voice, sharp enough to etch glass, pierced the quiet afternoon air. "Get that beast off my property now! He's attacking Norman, I saw it! Vandalism, destruction of property!" I sighed, dumped the groceries on the porch, and scooped up the general, who looked entirely unconcerned, purring as I carried him back inside. "Karen, he barely touched it," I called back. "He was just curious." "Curious?" she screeched. "He assaulted him! There are marks! I have documented it!" And documented she had, leading to the formal warning, the threat of fines, the sheer, unadulterated absurdity of it all. The problem was, this wasn't just about Norman. This was the latest offensive in Karen's ongoing war against anything that threatened the sterile perfection of her suburban domain. My crime? Owning a cat who occasionally enjoyed supervised exploration of his own backyard. Karen believed pets belonged indoors, period, or possibly confined to small, concrete runs hidden behind tall fences. The sight of General Meow lounging on my patio, batting at a butterfly on my lawn, or, heaven forbid, briefly stepping a paw onto the shared walkway sent her into paroxysms of indignation. After the animal control visit, the passive aggression escalated. Notes started appearing, tucked under my doormat or taped to my garage door. "Saw your cat looking intently at my bird feeder again today at 1432. This constitutes avian harassment. Please control your animal." "Excessive feline shedding observed drifting onto my porch during recent wind event. Request immediate remediation of this biological hazard." "Your cat made eye contact with my poodle through the fence. Fifi was clearly intimidated. This is unacceptable." Fifi is a yappy, ankle-biting creature who likely initiated the staring contest. Then came the cameras. Karen already had a doorbell camera, of course, but now 2 new, conspicuously high-tech security cameras appeared, mounted under her eaves, both aimed squarely at my backyard and patio doors. Just in case the general decided to launch another daring 30-second raid across the property line, presumably. "I can't live like this," I vented to Chloe one night, pacing the living room while the general watched impassively from his throne, an old armchair. I feel like I'm under surveillance by the cat Stasi. I can't let him outside for even 5 minutes without worrying she's going to call in an airstrike. He loves his little backyard patrols, chasing bugs, sniffing the bushes. It's cruel to keep him locked inside 24/7 just because she has a vendetta against anything with fur. Chloe, ever the pragmatist, suggested higher fences, or maybe planting a thick hedge. Or, she offered, only half joking, we could get Norman a tiny little restraining order. It wouldn't work, I sighed, sinking onto the sofa. She'd just find something else. The way he swishes his tail is provocative. His purr is noise pollution. What am I supposed to do? Build him a maximum security prison, a feline Alcatraz? I slumped back, defeated. Later that night, trying to distract myself, I put on a James Bond marathon. On screen, Roger Moore was navigating a fiendishly complex laser grid protecting some priceless Fabergé egg. Red beams crisscrossed the room, silent, deadly, elegant. I looked over at General Meow, now curled up on my lap, purring contentedly, oblivious to the international espionage unfolding on the TV and the suburban Cold War brewing just outside the window. Then I looked out the window towards Karen's house, dark except for the faint, accusing red glow of her security camera LEDs. Maximum security, lasers. What if... The thought flickered, absurd and ridiculous. No, that's insane! But the image wouldn't leave my head. A cat run. A really, really secure cat run. One that even Karen, with her surveillance cameras and her direct line to animal control, couldn't possibly complain about. A cat run protected by lasers. A slow grin spread across my face. The sheer, glorious technological overkill of it. The passive-aggressive masterpiece it would represent. It started as a joke, a fleeting fantasy fueled by spy movies and neighborly spite. But the more I thought about it, the more appealing it became. She wants him contained? I whispered to the sleeping cat. Fine, we'll contain him. In style. With lasers. Let's see her complain about that. Operation Laser Lockdown was officially initiated. My evenings transformed. Instead of relaxing with a book or watching TV, I plunged into research. First, catios, cat patios. I discovered a whole world of elaborate outdoor enclosures, ranging from simple window boxes to multi-story feline mansions with tunnels, bridges, and built-in scratching posts. Okay, feasible. Then came the lasers. My initial searches for home laser security grid mostly brought up infrared beams, the invisible kind used in actual security systems. Boring. And probably easy for a cat to bypass without triggering anything. I wanted visible lasers, bright red beams crisscrossing like in the movies, dramatic, unmistakable. A clear, glowing statement. This area secure for feline use only. Trespassers, especially gnomes, will be mildly startled. I briefly considered low-voltage electric wires, like for cattle, but immediately discarded the idea as cruel and definitely something animal control would have a problem with. No, visible, harmless lasers were the key. Class 2 lasers, the kind used in laser pointers and barcode scanners, bright enough to see, but safe to view momentarily. My design started taking shape on graph paper, then in a free CAD program I downloaded. This wouldn't be just a box with wires. No, the general deserved better. It would be multi-level, connecting to the back window via a secure tunnel. Level 1, a spacious sunning deck with a weatherproof bed. Level 2, an observation platform with a commanding view of the bird feeder on my side of the yard. Ramps connecting the levels. Built-in scratching posts made of sturdy cedar, all enclosed in heavy-duty wire mesh. And then, the pièce de résistance, the laser grid. Emitters and sensors mounted at precise intervals around the entire perimeter, top, bottom, maybe even diagonal crossbeams for extra flare. If a beam was broken, what? A siren seemed excessive. A strobe light? Hilarious, but might annoy other neighbors. A notification to my phone? Yes, definitely. And maybe, just maybe, linked to a single, strategically aimed sprinkler head? One pointed directly at Karen's award-winning peace roses near the property line? The thought made me chuckle evilly. "Okay, General," I muttered, sketching furiously while the cat watched from atop the printer. "We need emitters here, here, and here. Sensors opposite. If Karen tries any funny business near the fence line, whoosh, tactical hydro deterrents." The cat just blinked, unimpressed. Now came the hard part. Finding someone to build this monument to feline safety and neighborly spite. My first call was to Collins Custom Catios, a local business with rave reviews on Yelp, mostly pictures of happy cats in sensible enclosures. Colin answered, sounding exactly like you'd expect a man who builds cat houses for a living to sound: friendly, patient, and slightly covered in cat hair. "Collins Custom Catios, Colin speaking." "Hi, Colin," I said. "My name's Mike Henderson. I'm looking to get a quote for a fairly large, multi-level catio." "Excellent," Colin enthused. "Love building the big ones. Gives the little guys plenty of room to roam. What size were you thinking? Got some great designs with tunnels, skywalks, bubble windows." "That sounds great," I said. "I actually have some sketches of what I'm looking for. Standard wood frame, heavy-duty wire mesh, multiple levels, ramps. But there's one custom requirement. I need sturdy mounting points installed at precise 6-inch intervals around the entire perimeter frame. Top rail, bottom rail, maybe even vertical supports. For, decorative lighting." There was a pause on the other end. "Decorative lighting?" Colin repeated slowly. "Okay, that's a lot of mounting points, Mike. Like dozens? Maybe hundreds, depending on the final size. You sure? Looks more like you're setting up for a Pink Floyd laser show back there than just hanging some fairy lights." "It's a very specific aesthetic I'm going for," I insisted, trying to sound nonchalant. "Very secure lighting. Structured illumination. Can you just build the main structure with those mounting points factored in? Extra sturdy?" Colin sighed. "Well, it's your catio, Mike. If you want enough mounting points to launch a space shuttle, I can build them. Just gonna add a bit to the materials cost for the reinforcement. But yeah, the basic structure, tunnels, ramps, platforms, piece of cake." He quoted a price for the catio itself minus the lighting, which was surprisingly reasonable. Deal. Finding the laser specialist was trickier. Calling home security companies proved fruitless. "Visible lasers? Like in Mission Impossible?" one security guy asked incredulously. "Sir, those are Hollywood props. They don't actually stop intruders, and they're definitely not standard for residential." "It's not for intruders," I interrupted. "It's for boundary definition for my cat." "You want a laser grid for your cat?" Long silence. "Sorry, sir. We don't offer feline laser containment solutions." Click. I tried searching for stage lighting technicians, special effects companies, even people who set up laser tag arenas. Finally, I stumbled upon a website with flashing neon text and questionable GeoCities-era design. "Laserdave's Luminous Effects. We make light work for you." It looked promisingly weird. I dialed the number. A hyperactive voice answered immediately. "Laserdave, you got the need for speed of light?" Maybe," I said. "Are you Dave?" "The one and only, master of photons, sultan of spectacle. What you need, laser logo projected onto the moon? Fog machine big enough to hide Cleveland? custom lightsaber build? Actually, I said, taking a breath, I need a laser grid, visible red beams, low power, to enclose a cat patio. There was a moment of stunned silence, then an explosion of delighted laughter. A laser grid cat run? Wicked, dude, that's brilliant. Never done that before. Usually it's strobes for raves or laser harps for Burning Man. But a catio grid, love it. Totally doable. We use low-power Class 2 lasers, standard pointers, perfectly safe for momentary viewing. Just bright red beams crisscrossing. We can rig them up with sensors, easy peasy. So if a beam breaks, it triggers... what? Sirens? Air horns? A giant inflatable cat that pops up? A recording of your neighbor complaining? This guy got it. Maybe just a silent notification to my phone? I suggested. And possibly linking one specific beam sensor to a sprinkler valve? Laserdave gasped audibly. Ooh, tactical hydro deterrence. Even better, passive-aggressive perimeter defense. My man. Yeah, dude, we can totally hook that up. It's gonna look awesome, like something out of Tron, but with more fur. His quote was less than I expected, mostly because he seemed thrilled by the sheer novelty and potential bragging rights. Operation Laser Lockdown had its tech guru. Next hurdle, bureaucracy. Did a catio, especially one potentially classified as a photonic containment field, require a city permit? I spent an afternoon deciphering zoning codes. Structures under a certain square footage and height, not attached to the main dwelling, were often exempt. My planned catio just squeaked under the limit. Phew. But there was still the HOA Architectural Review Committee, headed, of course, by Brenda. I submitted the basic catio plans Colin had drawn up, omitting any mention of lasers and vaguely labeling the mounting points as supports for future decorative elements. The ARC meeting was predictably tense. Brenda eyed the plans with deep suspicion. A cat patio, Michael? She sniffed, adjusting her glasses. Is this structure truly necessary? Can't you simply keep the animal indoors at all times like a responsible pet owner? It's an enrichment enclosure, Brenda, I explained patiently, channeling my inner zookeeper. Highly recommended by veterinary behaviorists for feline well-being. And more importantly, I added, meeting her gaze, it ensures the general remains safely and securely contained on my property at all times, preventing any further unfortunate, gnome-related incidents or allegations thereof. I emphasized the last part slightly. Brenda frowned. And these numerous supports for future decorative elements indicated here. She tapped the plans. What kind of decorative elements require such extensive mounting? Low-voltage LEDs, I lied smoothly. For a soft ambient glow, very tasteful, energy efficient. Gary and Carol, the other committee members, seemed uninterested, probably dreaming of flamingos and yarn, respectively. Brenda clearly wasn't buying my ambient glow story, but she couldn't find a specific rule violation in the plans presented. The basic structure was grudgingly approved. She probably assumed I was just building a fancy cage, a monument to my defeat in the Great Cat War. Little did she know, the real construction hadn't even begun. Colin and his crew arrived a week later and got to work. The sound of saws and hammers filled the air. Within 2 days, the multi-level wooden frame stood tall, soon covered in sturdy black wire mesh. It looked good, solid, like a very nice, very normal, albeit large, catio. Karen watched the progress from her window, a smug little smile playing on her lips. I imagined her thinking, finally he's imprisoning that menace. Colin finished up, carefully installing the dozens of extra mounting points exactly to my specifications. All right, Mike, he said, wiping his brow and surveying his handiwork. She's built like a fortress. Should keep the general safe and sound. Still don't get the lighting setup you're planning. Looks like overkill to me. But the mounts are solid. You putting in disco balls and a fog machine too? Something like that, Colin, I grinned, handing him the final check. Thanks for everything. Phase 2 commenced the following Monday. Laser Dave arrived in a van that looked like it had lost a fight with a rainbow and a sticker factory. Neon logos for Laser Dave's luminous effects competed for space with holographic flames and pictures of aliens operating turntables. He bounded out, overflowing with manic energy, carrying cases filled with wires, emitters, sensors, and tools I didn't recognize. He got straight to work, running thin black wires along the Catio frame, mounting small cylindrical laser emitters and corresponding sensors onto Colin's carefully placed points. Top rail, bottom rail, even a few diagonal beams. For structural integrity of the photon field, as Dave put it. It quickly started looking less like a Catio and more like a miniature prison yard from a low-budget sci-fi movie. Naturally, Karen couldn't resist investigating. Her yappy poodle, Fifi, ironically off-leash and sniffing suspiciously close to my flower bed, served as her excuse to casually wander over towards the property line. "Michael," she called out, her voice dripping with suspicion. "What is all this elaborate wiring? I thought you mentioned simple LED lights." I strolled over, adopting my most innocent expression. "Morning, Karen. Fifi's looking energetic today. This? Oh, this is just the low-voltage power delivery system for the lights. Very complex circuitry. Got to ensure an even distribution of the ambient effect, you know?" Laser Dave, perched precariously on a stepladder adjusting an emitter, popped his head around. "Yeah, lady. State-of-the-art photonic containment field. Just calibrating the beam intensity now. Don't want to accidentally vaporize any squirrels." I shot Dave a look that could melt steel. "Field of light, Dave," I corrected through gritted teeth. "Ambient, decorative, light." Karen's eyes narrowed. "Photonic containment?" she repeated slowly, savoring the suspicious words. "That doesn't sound like LEDs, Michael. That sounds peculiar." She whipped out her phone and started taking pictures of Laser Dave, the wires, the emitters. Evidence for her next dossier, no doubt. She retreated back to her side of the yard, Poodle yapping at her heels, her mind clearly racing, trying to categorize this new, unexpected development. Laser Dave finished the installation by late afternoon. He tested each beam, aligned the sensors, and walked me through the control app on my phone. We set up the silent alarm notification. Then came the pièce de résistance. Linking the sensor on the beam lowest to the ground, nearest her rose bushes, to the solenoid valve on a dedicated sprinkler head. Sal, the metal fabricator from my last HOA spite project, long story, had helped me install for targeted irrigation. "Okay, dude," Laser Dave said, packing up his gear. "She's armed and operational. The Laser Cat run 5,000. May your feline overlord enjoy his luminous fortress." He gave me a fist bump and roared off in his psychedelic van. That night, I waited. I watched Karen's house until the last light clicked off around 10:30 p.m. The coast was clear. My heart hammered with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. I opened the app on my phone, took a deep breath, and tapped Activate Grid. Click. Softly, silently, brilliantly, it happened. A grid of vivid red laser beams snapped into existence, encasing the entire Catio structure in a luminous cage. Thin lines of light crisscrossed the darkness, defining the perimeter, reflecting faintly off the mesh. It looked utterly, breathtakingly ridiculous. And slightly awesome, like something Bruce Wayne would build if Alfred kept complaining about Catwoman stealing the good china. Now for the real test subject. I opened the back window and the connecting tunnel. "Come on, General," I whispered. "Your high-tech kingdom awaits." General Meow, roused from a nap, stretched languidly and padded cautiously into the tunnel. He emerged into the catio, blinking in the dim light. The lasers were off for this initial introduction. He sniffed the air, explored the ramps, gave the new cedar scratching post a tentative scratch, and hopped onto the top platform, surveying his new domain. So far, so good. Deep breath. I tapped the app again. Lasers on. The red grid sprang to life around him. The general froze mid-step. He stared intently at the strange red lines that had suddenly appeared in his path. He cocked his head. He slowly extended a paw towards a beam near the floor, batting at it curiously, like it was a particularly slow-moving bug made of light. My phone buzzed silently in my pocket. Beam broken. Zone 1. The cat seemed entirely unfazed by the beam itself, just puzzled by its sudden appearance. He withdrew his paw, watched the beam for another moment, then tried to step through it. Buzz. Beam broken. Zone 1. He paused, looked down at the beam, looked back at me through the mesh, as if to say, "Seriously? Red lines now?" He tried to step over it. Buzz. Beam broken. Zone 2. He considered jumping, then seemed to decide it wasn't worth the effort. He sat down, right there between two beams, and began meticulously grooming his tail, apparently accepting the weird red lines as just another inexplicable feature of his human's world. Cats are adaptable, if nothing else. Okay, one more test. The sprinkler. I crept near the fence line, staying out of Karen's camera view, and gently tossed a large, dry leaf through the lowest beam, the one aimed towards her prize-winning peace roses. A short, sharp burst of water shot out from the hidden sprinkler head, arcing perfectly across the property line and dousing the nearest rose bush in a targeted spray. It was beautiful. It was precise. It was deeply, wonderfully petty. I grinned like an idiot in the darkness. Predictably, the peace didn't last long. Karen, having undoubtedly witnessed the nightly laser light show from her window, was back on the phone. This time she apparently called everyone. Animal control. The police non-emergency line. Possibly the FAA, claiming I was creating a hazard for low-flying aircraft. A few days later, Officer Miller and his clipboard-wielding partner were back on my doorstep, looking even more world-weary than before. Mr. Henderson," Officer Miller began, pinching the bridge of his nose before he even finished the sentence. "We're back again. Complaint this time is about, He consulted his notes. Potentially hazardous laser beam emissions, an unpermitted electronic structure, and, again, potential animal cruelty, alleging the lights are stressing or harming the animal. "Officers, welcome back," I said cheerfully, gesturing towards the catio behind me. General Miao was currently demonstrating extreme stress by napping soundly on the top platform in a patch of morning sun. As you can see, it's just a standard catio structure, fully compliant with my HOA approval. I produced the stamped approval form from the file I now kept permanently by the front door. "And the lights you inquired about? They're low-power, Class II lasers, completely harmless. Same type used in barcode scanners. They're purely visual deterrents, designed to ensure the general remains safely within his designated enrichment area, exactly as per your previous instructions regarding containment." I smiled innocently. Karen materialized at her property line, practically vibrating with fury. "They're death rays!" she shouted across the lawn. "He's torturing that poor animal. Look at it, trapped in that laser cage. And the structure itself is an eyesore. It violates the aesthetic harmony." Officer Davies shone his flashlight into the catio. The lasers weren't visible in the bright daylight, of course. He looked at the peacefully sleeping cat. He looked back at Karen. He sighed. "Ma'am, the cat appears quite relaxed. And sir," he turned back to me, "while this setup is highly unusual. The lasers themselves, if they are indeed low-power Class 2 as you state, aren't illegal. And provided they don't actually harm the animal, there's no cruelty issue here. As for the structure itself and the aesthetic harmony, that really sounds like an internal HOA matter you need to resolve with your neighbor. And the HOA approved the structure, I added helpfully. Officer Miller just shook his head slowly. Folks, please try to resolve this between yourselves. We have actual emergencies to deal with. They turned and walked back to their van, leaving Karen sputtering impotently on her lawn. Mike, 2, Karen, 0. But I had a feeling this war was far from over. Life settled into a strange new routine. Each evening, as dusk fell, I'd perform the laser grid activation sequence via my phone app. The red beams would spring to life, bathing the backyard in a faint sci-fi glow. General Meow quickly adapted. Sometimes he'd bat playfully at the lower beams, setting off silent alarms on my phone that I learned to ignore unless they persisted. Mostly, though, he treated the lasers with feline indifference, napping peacefully within their confines or using the upper levels to survey his illuminated kingdom. Karen, however, did not adapt. Thwarted by animal control and the police, she shifted her tactics back to the HOA and passive-aggressive warfare. She filed official complaints about light pollution. The lasers were barely visible beyond my property line. She claimed the faint electronic hum from the power supply was interfering with her Wi-Fi signal and giving her migraines. She submitted photos to the ARC allegedly showing General Meow pacing frantically and exhibiting signs of laser-induced stress. He was probably just waiting for dinner. One night, my phone started buzzing incessantly around 2 a.m. Beam broken, Zone 3. Beam broken, Zone 4. Beam broken, Zone 3. Over and over. I dragged myself out of bed and looked out the window. Sure enough, I could just make out Karen in her bathrobe, standing near the fence with a powerful flashlight, deliberately shining it at the sensors, trying to trigger false alarms and presumably build a case that the system was faulty or harassing. I watched for a minute, then activated the sprinkler override. Fash! The sudden burst of cold water sent her scrambling back towards her house. The false alarms stopped. The neighborhood BBQ, hosted by the Millers down the street, seemed like the inevitable stage for the next confrontation. The laser cat run was, by now, a well-known, if bizarre, feature of the neighborhood. Some neighbors found it hilarious, others thought I was eccentric but harmless, and a few, undoubtedly swayed by Karen's propaganda, viewed it with suspicion. I was trying to make small talk with Doug about his new smoker when I saw Karen heading purposefully towards my backyard. She wasn't even trying to be subtle. She marched right up to the catio, where General Meow was lounging on the top deck, watching the party with regal detachment. "See?" Karen declared loudly to Mrs. Gable, who had followed her curiously. "Trapped in that horrible laser prison. It's unnatural." She leaned closer to the mesh, peering in. "Here, kitty kitty," she cooed, dangling a piece of cheese she'd pilfered from the appetizer tray near the edge of the enclosure. "Come on, you poor thing. Escape." General Meow looked at the cheese. He looked at Karen. He yawned, showing a surprising amount of fang for such a fluffy creature, then turned his back on her and began grooming his paw. So much for the daring escape attempt. Frustrated, Karen scanned the perimeter. Her eyes landed on the lower section near her side, the part protected by the sprinkler-linked beam. Maybe she thought she could quickly disable the sensor, or perhaps create an opening to prove the cat could get out if it wanted to. She knelt down, pretending to tie her shoe, and her hand darted out towards the small sensor unit mounted on the post. Her fingers brushed the invisible plane of the laser beam. Fish! The reaction was instantaneous. The sprinkler head erupted, delivering a perfectly aimed, high-pressure blast of water directly onto Karen. She shrieked, scrambling backwards, sputtering, dripping, covered in water and righteous indignation. The BBQ went silent. Everyone turned to stare. Karen stood there, soaking wet, mascara running, pointing a trembling finger at the Katio. Then at me, as I rushed over feigning concern. "Karen, are you all right?" I exclaimed, trying hard to keep a straight face. "What happened? Did you trip the decorative water feature's motion sensor? It's very sensitive." Doug burst out laughing. Someone else snorted. Even Mrs. Gable couldn't hide a smile. Karen, utterly humiliated, drenched and defeated by a combination of feline indifference and automated hydro-retaliation, let out another incoherent screech and stormed back towards her house, leaving a trail of damp footprints and shattered dignity behind her. After the great sprinkler incident, things calmed down. Remarkably so. Karen seemed to have finally accepted defeat. Maybe the public humiliation was too much, or maybe she realized she simply couldn't win against a man willing to weaponize lasers and lawn irrigation in defense of his cat. The complaints stopped. The notes ceased. The security cameras still watched, but their accusatory red glow seemed less menacing now. The laser grid remained, a glowing testament to the absurdity of it all. It became a strange neighborhood landmark. People would point it out on walks. "That's the house with the laser cat run," they'd whisper. Did I need it anymore? Probably not. Karen was subdued. The general was perfectly happy in his non-laser-enforced kingdom, but I kept it active. Partly because Laser Dave had done such a cool job, partly because the general seemed to enjoy the faint red lines as part of his ambiance, but mostly because every time I saw it glowing softly in the dark, it reminded me that sometimes the most satisfying solutions are the most ridiculously over the top. I was sitting on my patio one evening, sipping a beer, watching General Meow chase a moth inside his luminous fortress. Across the lawn, Karen was watering her roses, the ones that had miraculously survived the targeted dousings. She pointedly ignored me and the glowing red grid just feet away. Was it overkill? Absolutely. Was it expensive? You bet. Was it a slightly insane response to a minor neighborly dispute involving a garden gnome? Without a doubt. Worth it? I looked at the general, safely contained, perfectly happy, bathed in the soft red glow of his bespoke photonic containment field. I looked over at Karen's house, quiet and complaint-free. Yeah, totally worth it. I raised my beer in a silent toast. To General Meow, Scourge of Gnomes, Master of the Laser Run. And maybe, just maybe, to the enduring power of creative spite. Now, about that drone-based cat toy delivery system,